The artificial gravity settled around Elias Ward with a subtle, almost imperceptible hum, a constant reminder that he was aboard a vessel not of human origin, hurtling through the void toward the heart of the Zarynthian Empire. He stood before the viewport, a vast expanse of reinforced transparency that looked out upon the swirling chaos of hyperspace, a maelstrom of color and distorted light that defied terrestrial physics. The reflection staring back was not his own, not truly. It was the face of Lord Vaylon of the Cygnus Outer Reach, a carefully constructed illusion maintained by sophisticated bio-altering nanites and subdermal projectors. The cheekbones were subtly higher, the jawline slightly more angular, the skin tone adjusted to mimic the faint pearlescence common among Zarynthians from that now-defunct sector. Even his height had been augmented by micro-adjustments to his skeletal structure, bringing him closer to the Zarynthian average. Though still shorter than many of the true aristocracy, the deception was layer upon layer deep, extending to his vocal cords, modified to reproduce the complex clicks and tonal shifts of the Zarynthian primary language, translated in real time by the neural implant nestled deep within his cerebral cortex. Yet, beneath the borrowed skin, behind the translated words, Elias Ward remained, human, spy, Earth's last, desperate hope. His quarters were functional, Spartan by Zarynthian noble standards, but luxurious compared to the cramped bunks of Terran military vessels. Polished metal alloys formed the walls, emitting a soft, indirect light. Furniture seemed to grow organically from the structure itself. Smooth, flowing lines devoid of sharp angles. He ran a hand over the cool surface of a console displaying galactic transit data in intricate, flowing Zarynthian script. The ship, a diplomatic courier assigned to transport their discovered Lord Vaylon to the imperial court, was itself a marvel of alien engineering, silent, swift, and utterly foreign. He had spent the weeks of transit meticulously reviewing the Vaylon persona files, absorbing fabricated memories, family histories traced back generations, obscure planetary customs, economic data, even preferred recreational activities of the extinct Vaylon lineage. He practiced the subtle Zarynthian social cues, the precise angle of a head tilt, indicating deference, the controlled modulation of vocal tones signifying respect or disdain, the almost imperceptible shifts in posture that conveyed status. He had to be flawless. The Zarynthians, particularly those within the imperial court, were masters of observation, attuned to the slightest dissonance. His mission, conceived in the shadowed earthen bunkers of the Terran Coalition Directorate, was audacious to the point of insanity. Operation Starfall, infiltrate the Zarynthian Imperial Palace, the nerve center of an empire spanning thousands of star systems, identify key personnel, assess military readiness, locate strategic weaknesses, and above all, ascertain the final timetable and target coordinates for the impending invasion fleet aimed at Earth. The Zarynthian Empire, ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of its manifest destiny to impose its version of order upon the galaxy, viewed humanity as a minor infestation, a primitive species occupying strategically valuable territory, ripe for assimilation or eradication. Earth's fleets, valiant but technologically outmatched, could delay the inevitable, but not prevent it. Only actionable intelligence, a way to anticipate, to disrupt, to strike first at a critical vulnerability, offered any chance of survival. Elias was that chance, a single human penetrating the heart of the beast. The weight of billions of lives rested upon his ability to maintain the Vaylon charade. Failure was not an option, it was extinction. The ship's internal comm chimed softly, a melodic sequence unlike any Terran alert. The synthesized voice of the ship's intelligence spoke in flawless Zarynthian. Lord Valen, we are approaching deceleration limits. Arrival at Zarin Prime orbital station in one standard cycle. Prepare for docking procedures and transfer to planetary shuttle, Elias acknowledged, smoothing the front of his tunic, a garment woven from fibers that shifted color subtly with his movements, mimicking the light reactive fabrics favored by Zarynthian nobility. He checked his internal chronometer, syncing it with the ship's time. He took a slow, deliberate breath, calming the tremor of adrenaline that threatened to betray him. The performance was about to begin. Zarin Prime, the capital world, the jewel of the Empire, was a breathtaking spectacle even from orbit, a world swathed in swirling azure and emerald clouds, dotted with continents that glowed with the intricate light patterns of unimaginably vast cities. Orbital rings, colossal structures gleaming like spun moonlight, encircled the planet, housing docking facilities, defense platforms, and residential zones for trillions of beings. Space traffic was dense, ships of every conceivable size and design gliding through designated lanes with silent, ordered precision. Freighters carrying resources from subjugated worlds, sleek military cruisers patrolling the orbital lanes, elegant private yachts belonging to the aristocracy. It was a display of power and technological mastery designed to awe and intimidate. And it succeeded. Elias felt a chill despite the regulated temperature of the cabin. This was the heart of the Empire that saw his world as nothing more than dust to be swept aside. The transfer to the planetary shuttle was efficient, impersonal. Zarynthian officials, tall and aloof in their crisp gray uniforms, scanned his credentials without comment, their luminous eyes betraying no curiosity. The shuttle itself was opulent, lined with plush seating and offering panoramic views of the descent through the planet's upper atmosphere. Elias forced himself to appear nonchalant, observing the cityscape expanding below with the mild interest of a provincial noble returning to the capital after a long absence. The city, sprawling across an entire continent, was a fusion of organic-looking towers that seemed to pierce the clouds and intricate crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. Flying vehicles navigated complex sky lanes between the towering edifices, their movements governed by invisible traffic control systems. It was beautiful, terrifyingly so. A civilization that could build on this scale could surely extinguish a fledgling world like Earth without a second thought. The imperial palace dominated the central plateau of the capital city, a breathtaking architectural marvel that defied easy description. It wasn't a single building, but a sprawling complex of interconnected domes, spires, and floating platforms covering hundreds of square kilometers, crafted from materials that seemed to shift between solid, liquid, and light. Crystalline gardens floated on gravitic platforms. Waterfalls of pure energy cascaded down obsidian cliffs, and bridges of solidified light connected structures miles apart. It radiated power, antiquity, and an alien aesthetic that was both captivating and profoundly unsettling. Elias's shuttle docked smoothly at a designated diplomatic reception platform, high atop one of the central spires. He disembarked, stepping out into the filtered atmosphere of Zarin Prime, the air tasting faintly metallic, carrying exotic scents his translator struggled to identify. A delegation awaited him, led by a minor court functionary named Lorraine, whose stiff formality barely concealed a condescending appraisal of the provincial Lord Valen. Elias offered the precise Zarynthian greeting, bowing his head at the correct angle, keeping his gaze respectfully lowered. Lorraine acknowledged with a curt nod, gesturing for Elias to follow. They moved through corridors that seemed sculpted rather than built, the walls flowing seamlessly into floors and ceilings, illuminated by soft, ambient light that emanated from the material itself. Artifice and nature intertwined, luminescent flora grew in alcoves. Strange, beautiful crystalline formations pulsed with gentle energy. Servants, members of a genetically engineered subspecies, bred for docility, moved silently along the edges of the hallways, their downcast eyes avoiding direct contact with the nobility. Elias focused on absorbing every detail, mapping the layout in his mind, noting security checkpoints, sensor arrays subtly embedded in the walls, the patrol patterns of the crimson-clad Imperial guards whose augmented senses could likely detect a fly sneezing across the palace grounds. He walked with Valan's slightly hesitant gait, projecting the image of a man slightly overwhelmed by the scale and grandeur of the Imperial court after years in the galactic hinterlands. Lyrain led him to his assigned quarters, a suite of rooms far more opulent than his cabin on the courier ship. Panoramic windows offered stunning views of the palace complex and the city beyond. Soft Zarynthian music, a complex tapestry of harmonic resonances, played softly from an unseen source. A personal attendant drone, a hovering sphere of polished chrome, awaited his commands. "Your presence is expected at the evening assemblage in the grand vestibule, Lord Valan," Lyrain stated coolly. "Attire protocols are detailed on your personal console. A protocol guide drone can assist if required." The implication was clear. Do not embarrass yourself. Provincial. Elias thanked him with practiced humility, waiting until the functionary had departed before allowing himself a moment to release the tension coiled in his shoulders. He activated the sonic dampeners in the room, a standard privacy feature, and initiated a micro-scan for surveillance devices beyond the expected ambient monitoring. Clean. For now, he accessed the console, reviewing the complex etiquette required for the evening assemblage, a semi-formal gathering of the court. Every interaction, every gesture, would be scrutinized. Hours later, clad in the appropriate formal robes, deep sapphire interwoven with threads of silver that shimmered under the palace lights, Elias made his way towards the grand vestibule. The sheer scale of the chamber was staggering. It was a vast cavern of polished black stone and crystal, easily large enough to contain several Terran stadiums. Throngs of Zarynthian nobles milled about, their luminous skin and iridescent attire creating a dazzling, shifting kaleidoscope of color. Floating platforms carried refreshments, glowing liquids in crystalline vessels, intricate arrangements of alien flora emitting fragrant scents. The air hummed with polite conversation, the clicks and whistles of the Zarynthian language weaving a complex sonic tapestry. Instantly translated by his implant, he moved cautiously through the crowd, adopting Valan's persona, observing, listening. He overheard snippets of conversation, complaints about resource allocations to the fleet, gossip about rivalries between noble houses, speculation about the Emperor's mood. Every scrap was potentially valuable. He noted the presence of high-ranking military officers, their stern faces and rigid postures setting them apart from the more languid courtiers. Their insignias denoted fleet command, logistics, strategic planning, potential targets for information gathering, but also incredibly dangerous. Then a hush fell over the vast chamber. A low, resonant chime echoed, and all eyes turned towards the massive archway at the far end. The Emperor's procession entered. Emperor Thalor was even more imposing in person than the holographic intelligence briefings had conveyed. Tall, broad-shouldered for a Zarynthian, draped in robes that seemed woven from nebulae, his obsidian eyes scanned the assembly with an air of absolute, ancient authority. He radiated power, a palpable force that demanded deference. Beside him, however, walked the figure who made Elias's internal sensors spike with a warning proximity alert. Princess Kaelis, daughter of the Emperor, heir designate, and, according to the most reliable and terrified Directorate informants, the Empire's most skilled and ruthless operative, she was elegance and lethality embodied. Her gown of deep violet shimmered like captured twilight, contrasting with the focused intensity of her gaze. Where her father's eyes held the weight of empire, hers held the sharpness of a honed blade. She moved with a fluid grace that hinted at coiled strength, her senses seemingly taking in the entire hall simultaneously. Her reputation preceded her, master of infiltration, interrogation, and elimination, with an almost mythical intuition for detecting deceit. The Directorate's psychological profile had labeled her the Obsidian Cipher. Elias lowered his gaze respectfully as the Imperial pair passed, performing the requisite bow, careful to keep it neither too deep nor too shallow. Yet, he felt it, a fleeting, piercing scrutiny as Kaelis's eyes swept over his section of the crowd. It lasted only a microsecond, but it felt like an eternity. Like a high-frequency scan peeling back the layers of his disguise. Had she detected something? The infinitesimal energy signature of his implant, a flicker of human micro-expression beneath the Zarynthian mask. He forced himself to remain perfectly still, projecting Valan's mild awe and provincial deference. The moment passed. The Emperor and Princess ascended the dais at the far end, and the formal proceedings of the assemblage began. Elias resumed his cautious mingling, exchanging pleasantries with a minor official from the Ministry of Stellar Cartography, probing gently about recent survey missions near the Terran sector. Citing Valan's supposed interest in potential trade routes, he had to build his cover, establish Valan as a legitimate, if unimportant, presence. But the unsettling feeling of Kaelis's gaze lingered, a cold premonition in the pit of his stomach. The most dangerous player on the board had taken notice, however briefly. The game had truly begun, and the stakes were impossibly high. The following weeks became a masterclass in espionage and psychological endurance. Elias meticulously constructed the life of Lord Valan within the palace walls. He spent calculated hours in the Imperial archives, ostensibly researching the obscure history of his native Cygnus sector, while subtly accessing peripheral data nodes, searching for logistical information, fleet deployment schedules, anything related to the Terran campaign. He learned to navigate the complex currents of court politics, identifying factions, cultivating relationships with lower-level functionaries who might possess unguarded knowledge. He attended tedious state banquets, elaborate cultural performances, showcasing Zarynthian artistic prowess, often involving displays of controlled energy fields or gravity manipulation that bordered on weapons demonstrations, and endless formal receptions. He played the part of the slightly awkward, earnest provincial noble, eager to learn the ways of the capital, careful not to appear too intelligent or too ambitious. He transmitted his findings in highly compressed, encrypted bursts during calculated moments of low surveillance intensity, routing the signals through a series of hijacked civilian comm relays scattered across Zarynthian space, a digital needle hidden in a galactic haystack. Each transmission was a risk. Each kilobyte of data sent a small victory against the encroaching darkness threatening Earth. He learned more about the Zarynthian mindset, their deep-seated belief in their own superiority, their conviction that imposing their rigid order on lesser species was a galactic imperative, a burden of destiny. Dissent was rare, swiftly and ruthlessly crushed. The Emperor's word was absolute, enforced by a vast military and internal security apparatus. Yet, beneath the monolithic facade of unity, Elias detected fissures. Rivalries between noble houses simmered, Ambitious generals jockeyed for favor, and whispers persisted about the drain on resources caused by the massive fleet buildup. The invasion of Earth, while publicly lauded, was not universally popular among those footing the bill. These were potential fault lines, vulnerabilities he noted carefully. His encounters with Princess Kaelis remained the most nerve-wracking aspect of his existence. She moved through the court like a phantom, appearing unexpectedly. Her presence always preceded by a subtle shift in the ambient energy fields that his sensors detected. Her interactions with him were infrequent, but always pointed. She might compliment the cut of his Veylan robes, then casually inquire about the specific atmospheric composition of his supposed homeworld, a detail requiring expert knowledge to answer convincingly. Or she would engage him in a discussion about ancient Zarynthian poetry, referencing obscure texts known only to dedicated scholars, testing the depth of his fabricated background. During a demonstration of advanced Zarynthian shield technology, she stood beside him, observing the shimmering energy barriers repel simulated asteroid impacts. Impressive, is it not, Lord Veylan? She murmured, her voice a low hum, barely audible above the demonstration's roar. Our capacity to project order, to deflect chaos. Essential for navigating the debris-filled regions near the Terran sector, I imagine. It was a seemingly innocuous comment, yet laden with implication. Testing his reaction, Elias maintained his composure, drawing on the implanted Veylan knowledge base and his own espionage training. He answered her questions accurately, but with a slight provincial hesitation, careful not to seem too knowledgeable. He deflected her probes with practiced ease, expressing admiration for imperial technology while lamenting the lack of such advancements in his remote sector. He met her intense, analytical gaze with feigned respect, masking the constant vigilance beneath. Each encounter felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm, a delicate balancing act where a single misstep meant a fatal plunge. He couldn't shake the feeling that she saw more than she let on, that her casual inquiries were part of a deliberate, patient dissection of his identity. He started noticing subtle anomalies, data logs in the archives showing access requests to Veylan historical records originating from Kaelis's personal clearance code, faint sensor pings indicating brief, targeted scans directed at him during court functions, moments when her guards seemed to subtly box him in before she appeared. She wasn't just suspicious, she was actively investigating him, using the vast resources at her disposal. One cycle. Elias was researching ancient trade routes in a quiet, secluded section of the lower archives, a place rarely frequented by high nobility. He had discovered a discrepancy in manifests relating to tritium shipments, a key component in Zarynthian fusion power cores, volumes far exceeding the stated requirements for the known fleet. Where was the excess energy going? He was deep in concentration, attempting to bypass security protocols on a related energy grid database, when a familiar, low hum alerted him. He looked up, his hand instinctively moving towards a concealed compartment in his data slate, where a micro-disruptor was hidden. Princess Kaelis stood at the end of the archive aisle, partially obscured by towering shelves of data crystals. She was not in her formal attire, but in the dark, functional suit he had seen depicted in classified intelligence reports, the uniform of her covert operations unit. She held a small, sophisticated scanner, its display casting a faint blue light on her face. Her expression was unreadable, cold, analytical. The archives are vast, Lord Veylan, Kaelis said, her voice echoing slightly in the stillness. It is unusual to find nobility pursuing such mundane records, especially records pertaining to restricted energy distribution networks. She took a slow step forward, the scanner still active in her hand. Elias remained seated, forcing his heart rate to remain steady, projecting calmness he did not feel. Princess. An unexpected honor. I was merely tracing historical resource management patterns relevant to my home sector's past economic development, comparing ancient methods to modern efficiencies. He offered a practiced, deferential smile. Kaelis did not return it. She continued her slow advance, her eyes fixed on him. The scanner emitted a soft, almost inaudible ping. Your persistence is admirable, Veylan, as is your biosignature, almost flawless. She stopped directly in front of his workstation, close enough that he could see the intricate weaving of the dark fabric of her suit, sense the contained energy radiating from her. The scanner pinged again, insistently. Almost, she repeated softly. The nanite matrix maintaining your cellular structure emits a subspace resonance frequency, inconsistent with Zarynthian biology, extremely faint, easily masked by standard scans, but not by this. She held up the scanner. Its display showed complex waveforms, with one particular frequency highlighted in stark red. Terran origin, specifically, Directorate issue. Generation 7 bio-alteration technology. Elias froze. There was no point in further denial. She knew, not suspected. Knew. He slowly rose to his feet, his mind racing, calculating escape vectors, assessing her stance for weaknesses, preparing to activate the disruptor. This was the moment he had dreaded. The end of the infiltration. Kaelis watched him, her hand hovering near her side, where Elias knew she likely carried concealed weaponry, but she made no aggressive move. No alarm was raised. The silence stretched, thick with tension. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying immense weight. "Not your designation, your name." He hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Deception was useless now. Elias Ward, Coalition Directorate. Kaelis nodded slowly. A flicker of something, confirmation, perhaps even satisfaction, in her eyes. "Elias Ward," she repeated, testing the name. "Your directorate believes sending a single operative could significantly alter the outcome of the impending pacification." The Zarynthian term sounded even colder coming from her lips now. Arrogance or desperation? Perhaps both, Elias replied, keeping his voice level. When facing annihilation, desperation breeds audacity. He braced himself for the attack, the summoning of guards, the inevitable interrogation. But it didn't come. Kaelis lowered the scanner slightly, her gaze still locked on him. Intense, searching. "You have accessed restricted energy grid schematics," she stated, not a question. "You noted the tritium discrepancies, the power diversions to unregistered deep space coordinates. It wasn't just his identity she had uncovered, she had been monitoring his investigation, perhaps even anticipating it. Why? Your surveillance is thorough, Princess." Elias acknowledged cautiously. "It is my function," she replied simply. "Protecting the Empire involves understanding all potential threats, internal and external. Your presence, Elias Ward, represents both." She paused, her head tilted slightly, that analytical gleam returning to her eyes. "What conclusions have you drawn from the energy diversions?" He hesitated again, sharing his suspicions about a third party, the Virexians, was incredibly risky. It could be a trap, a way to gauge the extent of his knowledge before eliminating him. But her directness, her decision to confront him alone, suggested something other than standard Imperial protocol. It suggested she had her own agenda. He decided to gamble. "The energy isn't for the main invasion fleet. Not all of it. It's being channeled, secretly, towards coordinates outside Zarynthian territory, towards regions historically associated with the Virexians. Kaelis's expression remained impassive, but Elias detected a subtle tightening around her mouth, a flicker in her obsidian eyes. You are familiar with the Virexian historical designation. Impressive research for a Terran. My directorate is thorough, Elias countered, and ancient myths often contain kernels of truth, especially when trillions of terawatts of power are being secretly funneled towards their supposed territory. Kaelis remained silent for a long moment, studying him. The tension in the archive aisle was palpable, a standoff between two opposing forces, momentarily suspended in a fragile truce. The official designation for the Virexians is Extinct Threat Entity, she said finally, her voice low. Historical encounters were classified at the highest levels centuries ago, records purged. Publicly, they are considered folklore, a cautionary tale. Yet someone within your empire is diverting massive resources towards their mythical location. Elias pressed gently. Someone is preparing for something involving them, or perhaps collaborating with them. Kaelis's gaze sharpened. Be careful with your accusations. Human, treason is not a charge leveled lightly in this empire. Is it treason if it's the truth? Elias countered. Is protecting your empire not also about protecting it from internal corruption, from manipulation by hidden enemies? Another long silence descended. Kaelis circled him slowly, her movements fluid, predatory, like a lynx assessing its trapped prey. She stopped behind him, out of his direct line of sight, forcing him to remain still, every nerve ending screaming. You possess courage, Elias Ward, she murmured from behind him, and technology beyond our initial assessments. Your infiltration alone demonstrates a capability my father's advisors dismiss. She moved back into his field of vision, her expression shifting, becoming less the interrogator, more calculating. Perhaps standard interrogation is not the most efficient method for extracting the information I require. Elias tensed. What are you proposing, Princess? An arrangement, Kaelis replied, her voice regaining its cool, formal tone. A temporary cessation of hostilities, predicated on mutual exchange. You provide me with detailed, uncensored intelligence regarding Terran capabilities, military, technological, biological, everything your directorate fears us learning. You will also share your findings, your analysis, regarding these energy anomalies and your Virexian hypothesis. And, in return, Elias asked, wary. This felt too convenient, too dangerous. In return, Kaelis stated, I do not alert the Imperial Guard currently stationed less than 50 meters down this corridor. I do not have you transferred to the interrogation cells beneath the palace, where even your advanced physiology would eventually betray every secret your mind holds. I allow you to continue operating under my strict supervision. As Lord Valen, you maintain your access, continue your observations, your survival, and the continued secrecy of your presence becomes contingent on your full cooperation with me. It was an offer born of pragmatism, not altruism. She saw him as a potential asset, a source of unique information, perhaps even a tool to investigate matters she couldn't openly pursue herself. Trusting her was madness, but the alternative was immediate capture, mission failure, and the probable doom of Earth. He was trapped, but her offer provided the slimmest sliver of hope, a chance to turn this disaster into an opportunity, to gain an ally, however unlikely, within the enemy camp, an ally who might also suspect the deeper conspiracy at play. How do I know this isn't just a more elaborate form of interrogation? Kaelis allowed a faint, cold smile to touch her lips. You don't. You have only my word and the observable fact that you are still breathing. My primary function is the preservation and advancement of the Zarynthian Empire. If cooperation with an anomaly like you serves that function better than your dissection, I will cooperate. If you prove useless or treacherous, her eyes hardened, your existence will be terminated without hesitation. Understand. Elias met her gaze, weighing the immense risk against the potential reward, the fate of his world hanging in the balance. He saw the calculation in her eyes, the ruthless pragmatism, but also a spark of genuine curiosity, a desire for knowledge that transcended blind loyalty. I understand, he said, making his choice. Good. Kaelis nodded curtly. I will designate secure methods for our communication and information exchange. Do not deviate. Do not attempt independent actions regarding the energy diversions without my explicit authorization. Any mistake will invalidate our arrangement. She deactivated her scanner, the red warning light blinking out. Maintain your Valon persona flawlessly. Return to your quarters. We will speak again soon. Without another word, she turned, her form seeming to melt into the shadows of the archive aisle, leaving Elias alone once more, his heart pounding. His reality fundamentally altered. He was no longer just a spy, he was a double agent, bound in a perilous pact with the Emperor's deadly daughter, plunged deeper into a conspiracy that threatened to consume them both. The game had changed, the players realigned, and the path forward was shrouded in lethal uncertainty. The clandestine alliance between Elias and Kaelis solidified into a tense, carefully orchestrated dance of information exchange. Their meetings were brief, conducted in locations deemed secure by Kaelis, shielded communication chambers deep within the palace, private grav chariots traversing the city's upper atmospheric lanes, secluded observation decks overlooking the sprawling Zarynthian capital under its twin moons. Kaelis employed sophisticated counter-surveillance measures, routing palace sensors away from their meeting points, creating temporary blind spots in the omnipresent security grid. Elias, using his own directorate tech, added layers of encryption and signal masking to their communications. It was a partnership built on mutual suspicion and shared necessity. Elias provided Kaelis with detailed briefings on human history, culture, and scientific principles, carefully omitting classified military specifications while highlighting humanity's adaptability, resilience, and unexpected technological leaps in areas like artificial intelligence and cyber warfare, facets the Zarynthian military intelligence had grossly underestimated. He shared Earth's art, its music, recordings of its diverse ecosystems, trying to paint a picture of a world worth understanding, not just conquering. Kaelis absorbed the information with unnerving focus, her questions sharp, probing, revealing a keen analytical mind beneath her assassin's exterior. She seemed particularly fascinated by human concepts of individuality, emotional expression, and decentralized governance, ideas utterly alien to the Zarynthian collective hierarchy. In return, Kaelis provided Elias with carefully curated insights into the Zarynthian power structure. She explained the complex interplay between the ancient noble houses, the rising influence of the military-industrial complex spearheaded by expansionists like High General Malachor, and the Emperor's attempts to balance tradition with the demands of a growing, resource-hungry empire. She revealed the existence of clandestine factions within the court, some advocating for even more aggressive expansion, others quietly questioning the wisdom of provoking new conflicts while resources were stretched thin. She never explicitly betrayed her father or compromised core Zarynthian security, but she illuminated the political landscape, giving Elias context for the forces driving the planned invasion. She confirmed that Malachor was the primary advocate for the Terran campaign, constantly feeding the Emperor reports emphasizing Earth's strategic threat and minimizing its defensive capabilities. Their joint investigation into the Virexian connection progressed slowly. Painstakingly, Elias used his access, facilitated by Kaelis's subtle manipulation of security clearances, to delve deeper into the restricted energy grid logs. He uncovered patterns of siphoned power dating back decades, coinciding with Malachor's gradual rise through the military ranks. Kaelis, using her authority, accessed sealed historical archives, bypassing security protocols even she wasn't technically supposed to circumvent. She found fragmented records, heavily redacted. Speaking of a disastrous Zarynthian expedition into Virexian claimed space centuries prior, an encounter that resulted in catastrophic losses and a subsequent imperial decree purging all mention of the Virexians from public record. The official story was species extinction. The reality, Kaelis suspected, was a carefully managed cover-up of a humiliating defeat and a lingering, hidden fear. They cross-referenced energy signatures from the diverted power conduits with the fragmentary descriptions of Virexian technology found in the sealed archives. The match was disturbingly precise. The Virexians weren't extinct. They were active. And seemingly, they were receiving vast amounts of power from within the Zarynthian Empire itself, facilitated by one of its highest-ranking military officials. The horrifying implication became clearer. Malachor wasn't just an ambitious general pushing for war, he was likely compromised, acting as an agent or collaborator, knowingly or unknowingly, for the Virexians. The entire Terran invasion was potentially a Virexian gambit, used the Zarynthian military might to eliminate Earth, weakening the Empire in the process, leaving both powers vulnerable for a Virexian takeover. Earth wasn't the target, it was the catalyst for mutual destruction. This shared discovery forged a deeper, more complex bond between Elias and Kaelis. The purely transactional nature of their arrangement evolved. Strategic necessity bled into intellectual respect, which in turn sparked a dangerous, unspoken current of attraction. They argued, debated Zarynthian philosophy versus human ethics, challenged each other's assumptions. Elias saw past Kaelis's lethal reputation to the isolated, burdened individual beneath, wrestling with duty, doubt, and the dawning horror of betrayal within her own empire. Kaelis saw past Elias's human otherness to his courage, his intelligence, his unwavering loyalty to his people, a stark contrast to the political maneuvering and hidden agendas she navigated daily. In the sterile silence of secure rooms, surrounded by holographic displays of galactic data, they found moments of unexpected connection, a shared look of dawning realization as another piece of the Virexian puzzle clicked into place. A brief, hesitant smile exchanged after successfully bypassing a particularly complex security system. A moment when Kaelis described the beauty of a Zarynthian nebula, and Elias shared a recording of Terran birdsong, a fragile bridge across an immense cultural chasm. The lines blurred perilously. Elias found himself genuinely concerned for Kaelis's safety as they delved deeper into Malachor's conspiracy. Kaelis, in turn, took increasing risks to protect Elias's cover, subtly diverting suspicion away from Lord Valen, creating false leads for palace security to follow. Their loyalty, once clearly defined, his to Earth, hers to the Empire, became tangled, complicated by their shared knowledge and growing personal connection. They were caught between their duties and the terrible truth they had uncovered, a truth that implicated Kaelis's own people, her own military command, in a plot orchestrated by an ancient enemy. Kaelis faced the agonizing prospect of accusing a powerful general, risking civil war, and potentially undermining her father's authority. Elias faced the reality that saving Earth might require saving the Zarynthian Empire from itself, cooperating with the very power structure bent on his world's destruction. The tipping point came when Kaelis, using deep-level overrides learned during her assassin training, managed to access Malakor's personal, highly encrypted communication logs. What they found confirmed their worst fears: encrypted messages, using Virexian protocols hidden beneath layers of Zarynthian military code, detailed communications between Malakor and an identified Virexian command signature. The logs spoke explicitly of Phase 1 completion, the Zarynthian fleet buildup, Terran provocation, likely false flag operations, planned to justify the invasion, and post-conflict resource alignment, the Virexian plan to seize assets after Zarynthian and Earth weakened each other. Malakor wasn't just collaborating, he was actively taking orders, promised power and influence in the new order after the Virexians emerged victorious. The invasion fleet wasn't just targeting Earth, it was being deliberately sent into a conflict designed to cripple both sides. The launch was scheduled to coincide with a specific stellar alignment in less than 10 standard cycles. Time had run out. They huddled together in Elias's shielded quarters, the damning evidence displayed on a holographic screen between them, the silence thick with the enormity of their discovery. "We have to stop it," Elias said, his voice grim. "We have to expose Malakor, expose the Virexian plot. Before that fleet launches." Kaelis stared at the logs, her face pale beneath its usual luminescence, her expression torn. Exposing Malakor means accusing the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire of treason, based on evidence obtained through illegal means, presented by me, the princess, and you, an enemy spy. She looked at Elias, her eyes reflecting the immense pressure. It will tear the court apart. Many will refuse to believe it. Malakor has powerful allies. They will call it a Terran trick, a fabrication. They might even accuse me of being compromised by you. It's a risk we have to take, Elias insisted. The alternative is letting Malakor send your fleet into a Virexian trap, letting him sacrifice your people and mine for his own ambition and their gain. We have the proof. Kaelis, the communication logs, the energy signatures, the historical precedents. We have to reveal it. And how? Kaelis challenged, though her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. A private audience with my father. Malakor controls his security detail. We wouldn't get past the antechamber, leaking it to the public channels. Malakor's faction controls information dissemination. They'll bury it, discredit it, silence anyone who tries to spread it. Elias considered their options, the palace walls suddenly feeling like the closing jaws of a trap. There was only one scenario, one desperate gamble, that offered even a slim chance of success. The Grand Assembly, he said slowly. The final address before the fleet deployment. The entire court, the military command, the Emperor, everyone will be there. It's the only venue where Malakor can't completely control the narrative, where the evidence can be presented directly, publicly, before he can react. Kaelis stared at him, understanding dawning in her eyes, followed swiftly by apprehension. Publicly denounce Malakor at the assembly. Reveal your identity. In front of my father and the entire empire. It was borderline suicidal. They would be surrounded, exposed, with nowhere to run. It's the only way to guarantee the truth gets out, Elias argued. You present the evidence against Malakor and the Virexians. I reveal myself as proof of the manipulation, the underestimation of Earth, the pawn in their game. We trigger the broadcast simultaneously, send the evidence out on all channels before they can cut the feed. It will cause chaos. Division, yes, but it will shatter the certainty. It will force people to question. to investigate. It might be enough to halt the fleet, to expose the real enemy. Kaelis closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the terrifying audacity of the plan, openly defying Malachor, revealing her cooperation with a Terran spy, potentially throwing the Empire into disarray. It went against every instinct ingrained in her since birth. Yet, the alternative, allowing the Virexian manipulation to succeed, was unthinkable. She opened her eyes, her gaze meeting Elias's, filled with a newfound, steely resolve. "Prepare the broadcast packet, Elias Ward," she said, her voice regaining its firmness. "Load Malachor's logs, the energy data, the Virexian historical correlations, everything. We will need precise timing." She took a deep breath. "We do this together. For Zarin. For Earth. Against the shadow that threatens us both." The pact sealed in the quiet archive aisle had transformed into a desperate alliance poised to shake the foundations of an empire. Two unlikely figures, preparing to step into the heart of the storm, armed only with the truth and a sliver of hope. The immense throne room buzzed with a palpable energy on the day of the Grand Assembly. Sunlight, filtered through the crystalline dome high above, illuminated the vast space where the highest echelons of Zarynthian society gathered. Nobles stood shoulder to shoulder with decorated military officers, their diverse robes and uniforms creating a vibrant tapestry against the polished obsidian floor. The air hummed with anticipation, a mixture of patriotic fervor for the impending conquest and the underlying tension of court politics. Elias, positioned carefully within a group of mid-rank nobles, felt like an exposed nerve. His Valen attire felt paper-thin, his every breath measured. Kaelis stood near the Emperor's throne, radiating a regal calm that Elias knew was a carefully constructed mask over coiled readiness. High General Malachor stood beside her, basking in the spotlight, the architect of the glorious campaign, his face alight with triumphant ambition. Emperor Thalor, seated on his massive, intricately carved throne, surveyed the assembly, his ancient eyes holding the weight of millennia. He raised a hand, and silence fell instantly. His voice, amplified by hidden acoustics, resonated through the hall, speaking of Zarynthian destiny, the sacred duty to bring imperial order to the lesser species, praising Malachor's strategic brilliance and detailing the righteousness of the Terran pacification. As he spoke, Elias subtly activated the final sequence for the wide-spectrum broadcast device concealed within his ceremonial sash, linking it to Kaelis's hidden transmitter. Their eyes met fleetingly across the expanse, a shared glance of grim resolve. Now or never. Just as Thalor prepared to utter the final command to launch the fleet, Kaelis stepped forward, violating all protocol. "Father," her voice, clear and carrying, sliced through the Emperor's speech, causing a collective gasp to ripple through the assembly. Thalor turned, his expression a mixture of shock and stern displeasure. "Kaelis, the meaning of this interruption. Forgive me, Father." Kaelis bowed, her voice ringing with urgency. "But the fleet must not launch. Not yet. Not until you understand the true nature of this war, the deception that underpins it." Malachor instantly bristled, stepping forward protectively. "Princess, this is outrageous. Your Majesty, she is overwrought." "I am not overwrought, General," Kaelis snapped, turning to face him, her eyes blazing. "I am informed of your treasonous alliance with the Virexians." She activated her transmitter. Instantly, the large holographic displays flanking the throne, meant to show fleet readiness, flickered, replaced by scrolling text. Malachor's encrypted communications with the Virexian command. the energy diversion data, the historical evidence of Virexian manipulation. Simultaneously, Elias triggered the empire-wide broadcast. Alarms began sounding throughout the palace and, Elias hoped, across the planet and the system, as unsecured comm channels carried the explosive revelations far beyond the throne room. Lies, Malachor roared, his face contorted in fury and panic. Fabrications created by this traitorous princess and her Terran collaborator. He gestured wildly towards Elias. This supposed Lord Valen is no Zarynthian. He is a spy from Earth. He is indeed. Kaelis affirmed loudly, turning the accusation into confirmation. Elias Ward, an agent sent because his people suspected the manipulation you orchestrated. General, proof that Earth is not the primitive nuisance you portrayed, but a pawn in your Virexian master's game. Elias dropped the Valen facade, standing straight, meeting the hundreds of stunned, hostile Zarynthian gazes leveled at him. The dual revelations, Malachor's treason and the presence of a human spy working with the princess, threw the assembly into utter chaos. Shouts erupted. Nobles drew ceremonial daggers. Officers loyal to Malachor reached for sidearms. Others stared in horrified disbelief at the evidence unfolding on the screens. The emperor looked from the screens to his daughter, to his most trusted general, his face a mask of dawning, terrible understanding and cold fury. Malachor, desperate, drew his concealed energy weapon, aiming it not at Kaelis or Elias, but at the emperor himself, a mad gamble to seize power. But Kaelis moved like lightning, a violet blur intercepting his arm, twisting, striking with brutal precision. The weapon clattered harmlessly away. In seconds, the High General was subdued, disarmed by the princess he had underestimated, just as loyal Imperial guards finally surged forward to secure him amidst the bedlam. "Elias, now!" Kaelis yelled over the din, grabbing his arm. Using the chaos as cover, they moved swiftly towards a side exit Kaelis had pre-planned, Elias deploying sonic stunners and flash charges from his belt to disorient Malachor's loyalists, attempting to block their path. Kaelis guided them through a maze of service corridors and secret passages, known only to the royal family and their most trusted protectors. Her movements economical and precise, Elias covering their retreat with tactical efficiency. They were declared traitors, fugitives within the heart of the empire they had sought to save from itself. But the truth was out. Reaching a hidden auxiliary hangar bay, they boarded a sleek, unmarked Zarynthian scout ship Kaelis had secreted there. As the ship blasted free of the palace complex, rising above the chaotic capital city, Elias looked back at the majestic, now turbulent, heart of the empire. He saw Kaelis beside him, piloting the vessel with practiced skill, her face set with determination. The broadcast confirmed delivery to Terran coalition channels, Elias reported, reading the confirmation signals on his wrist device. They know. Both sides know about the Virexians now. Knowing is not the same as believing or acting, Kaelis replied, her eyes on the starfield ahead as she plotted their jump vector. Malachor's factions will fight to regain control. Many on your world might see this as a Zarynthian trick. The real battle, the one for peace and truth, has just begun. She glanced at him, a hint of warmth beneath the exhaustion in her eyes. But we started it. Together. As the scout ship elongated, preparing to enter hyperspace, leaving Zarin Prime and its turmoil behind, Elias felt the crushing weight of failure lift slightly, replaced by the daunting reality of their new mission. They were two fugitives, an unlikely pairing of human spy and alien princess, bound by a shared secret and a common enemy. Their actions had averted immediate war but ignited countless conflicts. Yet, as they plunged into the swirling colors of hyperspace, heading towards the fringes of known space to seek allies and build a fragile coalition against the Virexian shadow, there was hope. A dangerous, uncertain hope, but hope nonetheless. They were no longer just agents of their respective worlds, but symbols of a potential future, a united front against a hidden darkness. Their journey was far from over. It was evolving, leading them toward a destiny neither could have predicted, side by side, into the vast, uncertain expanse of the galaxy, carrying the fate of worlds within their small ship. The path to a true happy ending, a lasting peace, would be long and arduous, but for the first time, it seemed possible.